Well, into the overnight hours, and today we have seen, as expected, the very quick downgrading and the very quick, really decaying of Eta now. Weakens to tropical depression as the 7 p.m. advisory Eastern time here. Eta weakens to tropical depression, left threatening, flash flooding, blah, blah, continues. So minimal pressure down to 1,002 millibars, 35 miles per hour, and is continuing to move generally west at around 7 miles per hour. So, as expected with the mountainous terrain and everything, the center of the system, Eta itself, has completely fallen apart today, and we are now seeing a system that is very disturbed. And we here at the last news team, we almost called it a post-tropical low, if not a just a low pressure system. But we've gone ahead and I kept it as a tropical depression. But at this point, I am wondering about downgrading this to just a low pressure system over the Central American coast. If we look at the current forecast cone for the system, you're going to be able to see that we now have most of Florida in the cone, and further strengthening and re-intensification of Eta is expected. Now, they are also expecting this to weaken to just a post-tropical depression or low by tonight, basically. But then re-strengthening into a tropical storm is expected all the way up to potentially 60 mile per hour. And the National Hurricane Center is currently expecting potentially a landfall here in Florida. Now we've seen a general shift westward, generally not since the latest advisories, with at first the cone showing it here, then more like this, and now over here. So, but we're staying here. The cone is still staking pretty much more than half of Florida. All the way up here, the entire southern part of Florida is now in the cone, meaning the center could go anywhere in this entire area. So it could really turn as soon as near Cuba and really make landfall near Melbourne, Florida, on the easternmost portion of Florida. So we're going to have to track this very closely. If we look at the current IR loop, as you can see, we've really seen the decay of the storm, and it is now, even at this point, hard to track even where the center of circulation is. But what I can tell you is that if we pause this, we knew where the center of circulation was earlier. We still have some convection wrapped around to this, and we were fairly able to see where the center of circulation was, with obviously that convection staying over the ocean, and we're not really having any convection close to the center, and most cloud cover has dissipated. But then as we went, as you can see here, it is now very, very hard to even mark where that center of circulation is. But based on my analysis, the center of circulation seems to be around here, okay? Now, it's kind of hard, but pretty much the storm has now split into this here and this. So what's happening lately is I've starting to notice here that the convection that built up here is starting to get rotated around the storm. Because as we look back a couple hours ago, we had a huge ton of convection that was building up in the Caribbean, north of Nicaragua. And as we moved on, you can see that it is now really starting to rotate around the storm, and is now really starting to push inland and rotating around. So what we could be starting to see is actually that moisture getting pulled in from the Caribbean and actually getting pulled in potentially that center. And we're also seeing here some moisture forming here that could also get pulled in. And so what we could see happening is potentially some quicker re-strengthening than expected when it moves inland, as we're already seeing some of that moisture and convection getting wrapped around the center here. So potentially we could see this. But overall, this is just bad news, as we are just going to be seeing more rainfall falling on there. Now, we just saw the National Hurricane Center cone here, and this is the official lasty news cone for the system. And we're currently expecting a landfall with winds of 60 miles per hour, as you can see. So this is our cone here. We've called it, of course, a post-tropical depression, if not just a depression. But we're expecting, of course, to take that turn here to the north soon, and then become a tropical storm with winds of 40 miles per hour, then strengthening further all the way up to 60 before making landfall in Florida. We do have to really have Florida landfall compared to the National Hurricane Center, which really has this steep turn to the left. We don't have that yet. But this is mainly due to the uncertainty of the models here. We have a lot of models taking it. A lot of models are taking it like this. A lot of models are taking it like this. Lots of models are taking it down here, and some are just looping it around back over down here. So because of such uncertainty, I kind of went right in the middle and just straight up here. But this is likely to really start shifting further and further this way, as we will be able to see on those latest tracks here. And really, as you can see here, this is our current cone. This is the current cone, and in my opinion, it's fairly accurate here. If I show it to you guys, this is the current last used cone. It's just like this. So if you think about it, it's fairly accurate. National Hurricane Center, on the other hand, the National Hurricane Center's cone is just like this, basically. This is the National Hurricane Center's cone. It goes like this. So the only really difference is maybe a little farther out. Maybe, I mean, but I think since we're still seeing some models taking over there, this has does room to change. But this is the current spaghetti models continuing to show initially as southern Florida landfall, and then moving back into the Gulf and potentially a panhandle landfall. Now the models, the GFS is looping it around everywhere. The European model is going like that back over here. So the overall consensus of the models does not know what's happening, and we'll be showing you guys right now after this. First of all, here, as you can see, models do expect this, of course, to weaken to a tropical depression, as expected, did happen, and then strengthening to occur, of course, as I was saying, potentially to a high tropical storm. Two models showing a hurricane. It's going to be a little bit harder to see a hurricane from this because of some high wind shear, but models do, pretty much every model do expect strengthening to start to occur in about 36 to 24 hours or so, and then some leveling off or some weakening. So let's look here at the GFS model, and really what it's showing is absolutely. People have been saying it's all over the place. It's a crazy little run here, but I'm gonna be like breaking it down for you guys and showing you guys how this is. But here's our low pressure center, 1,003 millibars right here. As you can see, moisture really spreading out. This is what I'm saying. It's still embedded in that general area of moisture with that cold front, obviously right here. So as we move on, obviously. If it's gonna load, I hate when it does that. But as we move on, obviously, it's gonna be re-strengthening, obviously, into a system. I'm just trying to make it load here. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, so don't know why it won't load. Okay, here we go. Maybe it's gonna load. So as we move on here, it's gonna be emerging off the Gulf Coast as expected, or not the Gulf Coast, of the Caribbean, and that's obviously expected. We've talked about this now multiple times, and it is expected to be emerging, and in about a couple of 1 or 2 days or so, it should be back in the Caribbean. As you can see, 1,004 millibars back over the Caribbean. So this is what we're going to be looking, general area of moisture spreading fairly far out, and then a high pressure up here, which is going to be steering it, right? So we're going to have this going on here, and it's going to be generally strengthening and kind of moving here. So this is obviously what the models are showing, moving this way over Cuba and potentially somewhere in this general area. GFS takes this into account, but then actually we do have something kind of weird happen. We start to see it dip back down, and this is due, as you can see here, that high here starting to push a little farther down. So what's happened with this, it actually makes landfall in Florida with winds of 981. So this is what happens here. Make that Florida landfall in the Keys potentially. Obviously 981 millibars strengthens a little bit, 978, 980, 979. So it strengthens in the upper 970s. It strengthens in the upper 970s and continues to strengthen. And actually, it's really interesting how this moves, because then we actually have another high pressure here that's moving in, likely pushing it that way, I suppose, which is why it's going back down that way. And so what happens here is that it really strengthens all the way down to 947 at one point. And then makes landfall, believe it or not, in the Yucatan Peninsula, dramatically weakens all the way down and dissipates. And then, as you can see, we also do get another storm that makes landfall in Nicaragua. But this is what the GFS is showing very interestingly here. So very interesting run from the GFS. And if we play it again, the GFS shows it going like this, like that, back down here into. So basically like this, and then very, very interesting to be honest, because we have a high pressure that picks it up here, and then another high pressure that brings it back down here. So unlikely scenario, but interesting nonetheless. If we look quickly here at the CMC model, it's been showing fairly the same since the beginning with the CMC. It's been pretty consistent. Again, coming off the coast here, and actually really not strengthening much, but makes landfall in Florida and kind of dissipates in Florida. Really not strengthening any with the CMC, maybe a weak 40-mile-per-hour storm. So we're really not seeing much, but the icon here is going all out. Look at the icon here. Forms it, quickly strengthens it, all the way down to 978, making landfall on the eastern coast, and then moving inland with this one. So another scenario. So we have a couple, different possible scenario here. European model, on the other hand, it's going again, coming here, and then it actually makes landfall maybe in the Keys, and then back making landfall on the Panhandle. So those are a little bit of all scenarios we're looking at with here. And coming into play with this, really, the cone, if we had to, the cone should be really extending even further out. Really, the storm could be going anywhere from this, as we've seen with the GFS, from even looping like that and then back this way. So we have so many possibilities, and that's just going to be how it's going to be interesting with those high pressures. Now, before I do end this video, I do want to thank you guys so much for 100 subscribers, and it means so much to me. So thank you guys for helping me to get to my goal to 100 subscribers before the end of November. So we did it. So now it's road to 200 subscribers, guys. Let's do this. Of course, when the Atlantic season is done, I will be covering system in the other basins, Indian, West Pacific, Australian regions, etc. Also, subscribe to the weather community with the weather coverage and weather follower, as well as myself posting videos when tropical cyclones do impact land. Otherwise, don't forget to subscribe and like, and I will see you guys in the next one, covering here potentially what could be a major impact to Florida and what could break our free season here in Florida. We could maybe potentially finally see a tropical or hurricane impact.